Hi guys, this is a bit different to normal. I'm gonna run through a problem I have with Microsoft, and that is their almost criminal negligence in terms of the e-waste that they create by producing terrible non-backwards compatible software. So, do you remember your first computer that you got? So this is my first computer that I owned. It's a ThinkPad T60, which was around 2005. I'd somehow managed not to buy a computer before that, and I quickly upgraded that to a desktop computer so I could use two monitors to help with productivity. Now, these two first computers, they're quite limited in terms of what you could do with them, and certainly today you could probably still use a fairly basic Linux distribution on them, but they're certainly not going to run the latest version of Windows, and they probably struggle with some 3D applications. But the third PC that I owned is an XW8400. Now, this is a completely different animal. It's got two processors. You can modify it to your heart's content. It's got slots for everything, and it was initially designed for intensive applications. It's built on server components, so it's meant to be run for very long periods without any degradation, and I'm still using this computer today, 20 years after it was made, and it works fine, provided that I use Windows 7, because over the last few years I think Microsoft have lost track of providing a decent product. If you go on the Microsoft website now, the first thing they will try to do is sell you new hardware, their own hardware, which obviously they're maximising their profits on, and backwards compatibility therefore will damage their business model, and I just think it's a really negligent and thoughtless thing to do, considering what happens to all the old equipment, which we'll have to look at in a minute. So I'm sure you'll recognise this. It's the International Space Station. And why am I showing you that? Well, on the International Space Station, when they first set it up, they had a bunch of ThinkPad A31s. Now they're even older than the ThinkPad T60, which we saw a picture of earlier. They're pretty archaic laptop, and they're still in use up there, about 22 years after they were made, and that's because it's only really possible because they're using a Linux operating system. So on an old PC, old laptop, no matter how rubbish it is, you'll always be able to find a Linux operating system which will make it work pretty much nearly every time. So there's a really great Linux distribution called Puppy Linux, which is very simple. I mean, you're not going to really enjoy the visuals of it, but it will allow you to surf the internet and use your laptop or PC pretty much no matter how old it is. And you might struggle with images and videos and things, but it will work. Now, the reason why that's important is because every time we get a piece of equipment which doesn't work, it goes in the bin, and then what happens to it? Electronic stuff's really difficult to recycle because it's lots of amalgamated materials all stuck together really, really well. And if you go to countries in Africa where all this waste gets exported to because it's so labour intensive, the economies of their work, you'll find just heaps and heaps of rubbish all over the place, and this is all entirely avoidable. I mean, sure, cathode ray tube monitors, I guess they're not really energy efficient anymore, and I'm not saying you couldn't use them, but they're impractically large and inefficient, and so perhaps that's a warranted waste stream. But you've got millions of electronic devices there that would still work if Microsoft made their operating systems better. And who would just from a financial point of view, I would be willing to pay for that. I would pay for Windows Retro or something so I could carry on using old equipment and avoid the environmental impact of throwing it out. I just wonder whether the people who make those decisions at Microsoft really even consider what they're doing to the planet by making such incredibly bad software. So there you go, rant over. Thanks for watching, bye.